All right. Good evening. Daf Yomi, sponsor for the week by Rabbi Aaron and Evelyn Kasasi. Le'ilui Nishmas Rabbi Aaron's grandfather, Aaron ben Shimon, whose yahrzeit is on the 8th of Iyar, and B'schus Refuah Shlema for Yaakov ben Dina Chedva. We switch topics a little bit. Now we get into the fabulous, wonderful world of Negoim, of Tzaras. Let's learn a little bit about Tzaras. Yeah, exactly. We're like 1 week late.
Yeah.
It's still better late than never. Okay, so we're going to talk about Maros Negayim Shnayim Shehin Arba. There are two that are four when it comes to the afflictions of Tzaras. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so, Tanan Hasan, let's talk about the first Mishnah in Maseches Negayim so that we bring ourselves up to speed on the basics of Negayim. Maros Negayim Shnayim Shehin Arba. There are two types of Negayim, which are four. So there's going to be two main types, and then they're subsidiaries. The first one is Baheres. It's the top one. Baheres is Aza Kishelig. It is bright white, and it looks like snow. Shniala, the second one on the list, is, the second one to Baheres is Sid, is plaster. So that's Kisid Haichal. It has the same color as the lime or the plaster of the sanctuary of the Beis HaMikdash. Se'es, the Se'es one, so that is Katzemer Lavan, it's like white wool. And Shniala Kekrom Beitza, and the one that is subsidiary to that one is the membrane of the egg, not the egg shell, but the membrane.
The yolk or the egg white?
Neither. The membrane. If you peel an egg, right, it has the under the shell, it's got that little filmy piece, right? Yeah. That's the kind of white we're talking about. Okay? So this Mishnah tells us that every one of these are your main ones, right? Your Baheres and your Se'es. And each one has a subsidiary one to it. And we'll explain that. Running out of ink.
Dashko has the chart.
Here's to shake it.
There you go. And then this goes to that one. Okay? So now, my goodness. It's one of those nights. Okay. So, Baheres has a subsidiary of it, which is Sid. The word subsidiary, we'll learn, is the word sapachas, right? The pasuk says that we have Se'es, O sapachas, O Baheres, right? We have a Se'es, a sapachas, and a Baheres. So a Se'es, it's subsidiaries, and the Baheres, which also implies its subsidiary. And that tells me that this one is with this one, and this one is with this one. That means that if there's a nega, an affliction that has part of it looking like this color, and part of it looking like this color, it's the same because they are one and one's a derivative of the other. But if I have this one and this one, those are two different ones. They're independent. They don't combine together to form the size that you need. Okay, so this one and this one, according to this Tanakh, we'll say that this one and this one combine together, and this one combine together. Now, I wrote them in this order because this is the order of brightness, right? Snow is the brightest, then wool, lime/plaster is the third brightest, and then the egg membrane is the
Gemara.
Anything.
Also gives you the same thing.
Yes.
That's in order.
That we both took it from the same place, the Mishnah in Maseches Negayim. So then, anything underneath a Krom Beitza is not considered Tzaras. It's less white. They call that in the Torah called a bohak, which is less white and therefore is tahor. It's not tummy. Okay, that's what we learn in Maseches Negayim. Okay, Amar Rabbi Chanina. So Rabbi Chanina says, Man Tana Maros Negayim. Who is this opinion in Maseches Negayim that teaches this setup about the Negayim, about Tzaras? That there's two, and then each one, basically there's two main ones, and then there's the subsidiaries of those two. It's Delok Rabbi Akiva. This is not going to be what Rabbi Akiva holds. De'i Rabbi Akiva, because if it was Rabbi Akiva's opinion, Kevan Da'amar Zu Lamala Mizu V'Zu Lamala Mizu. So he holds that you take a list of all of these, and we'll see this later on where he holds this, you take a list and you put them in order of brightness. And he says that each one only combines with whatever is directly above it in brightness. Okay? So he says that it sounds like a Sid can combine with a Se'es, and a Krum Beitza can combine with a Sid. But he doesn't hold that a Sid combines with a Baheres or a Krum Beitza combines with a Se'es because they're not directly connected, they're not directly next to each other in order. Okay, so that's the difference between Rabbi Akiva and the Tanakama. So our Mishnah,
Doesn't mean combine.
that means that if you have half a size of a gris of a nega of one type and half a gris of a nega of the other type, so then you can combine those two together to form one gris, and that is the one affliction, and the person is tamei. However, if they don't combine, it means that you have half of this type of an affliction, half of this type of an affliction, and you're still tahar.
So I still don't understand. You have a spot.
Yeah, on your
half
right.
of it is.
Half of it, let's say, half of it is a Baharis and half of it is a Sid.
I see.
So according to the Chachamim, that's going to combine. According to Rabbi Akiva, that's not going to combine. Okay, and so therefore, that's whether you're tummy or not, is depending on whether you hold like the Chachamim or Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so now, Imkain, so because if our Mishnah was, in fact, following Rabbi Akiva, so Tiras Sid Heichal Militzarif. So then you have this, the color of the plaster of the Heichal. How can it combine to anything, right? You Tiharta Sid Heichal Militzarif. You've made this Sid is now unable to become, in order to combine with anything. Why is that? Because man litzarfe. Which one? Where's Sid going to combine with? So litzarfe bahadi baheres. If you're going to tell me that Sid is going to combine with baheres because Sid is a subsidiary of baheres, which is what the Mishnah Negoim said, and therefore those two can combine. So ika se'es de'adifa minhe. You can't, because Rabbi Akiva also requires that they be next to each other in order of brightness, and se'es interrupts and it's in the middle. So therefore, that's not going to work. And litzarfa bahadi se'es. So if you're going to take Sid is going to combine with the se'es, that you couldn't do either, because lav toloda didehu. According to our Mishnah in Negayim, se'es is not related to Sid. Se'es is related to Krum Beitza. So therefore, according to our Mishnah, these two should not combine. According to Rabbi Akiva, these two should not combine, which means that Sid can't combine with the Se'es and can't combine with the Baharis. So how are you ever going to wind up with Sid being Tameh? So therefore, it's clear that those two positions are exclusive, right? You cannot hold both of these positions. You either hold that Sid combines with Se'es, or you hold that Sid combines with Baharis. If you're the Mishnah, you hold Sid and Baharis go together. If you're Rabbi Akiva, Sid and Se'es goes together. Okay, so that's how that works. So, ihachi, okay, so if what you're saying is true, that's a good point, but krum beitzanami, because then you should have the same problem, bahadiman litzarfe. What about the egg membrane, right? The egg membrane should have the same problem, right? Because where is the egg membrane going to combine with? Litzarfe bahadi se'es. If you're going to tell me that this krum beitza is going to combine with se'es, well, ikasid da'adif minei. Rabbi Akiva is going to tell you can't do that because Sid is in the way, right? It's in between. Litzarfe bahade Sid, you're going to tell me Krum Beitza is going to combine with the Sid, lav bar minehu. That can't happen because according to the Mishnah, Sid is a derivative of Baharis and Krum Beitza is a derivative of Se'es. These two are unrelated to each other. They can't combine together either. So therefore, you should be asking, why are you only asking the question about where is Sid going to combine with? Ask the question, where's the Krum Beitza going to combine with? You're going to be stuck in the same way. So he says, the Gemara answers, Hi Mai. What's the comparison? That's not the same thing. Because Bishlama below Sid, Heichal, Krum Beitza, Lokasha. He says, if it weren't for the Sid issue, the Krum Beitza issue wouldn't be that big of a problem. Diafa gav the Krum Beitza mitatoy de se'es. Because, according to Rabbi Akiva, even though Krum Beitza is well underneath Se'es, right? Krum Beitza has got two spaces underneath. Rachmana Omar, the Torah says, the pasuk says, the quote is, Vila Se'es, Vila Sapachas. So he says the Se'es and the Sapachas, and the last word in the pasuk is Baharis, but we're not really worried about that. The Torah says Se'es, and then Sapachas, Vila Sapachas. Sapachas is the subsidiary. And it's telling us, Sapachas Tfelo L'Se'es. It's telling us that Se'es has these two subsidiaries associated with it. And so therefore, despite the fact, according to Rabbi Akiva, despite the fact that he normally holds that you need to have these adjacent in order to make them tameh. The way that the pasuk is listed says that krum beitza, that both of these are really subsidiaries of seis. So sid can combine to ace because it's directly below it, but krum beitza can as well, because the pasuk calls everything underneath it a subsidiary of seis. Now, right. So now, Afal Gav de Minachta Minetuva. So therefore, even though Krum Beitza is well underneath Seis, it's got something interrupted in between, it nevertheless is going to combine with Seis. Nothing, according to Rabbi Akiva, Baheres has no subcategories. Right? The way that, and that's what's going to be the problem with our Mishnah, according to Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah can't be according to Rabbi Akiva, because our Mishnah said there's two that are four. Well, according to Rabbi Akiva, there's one that's one here, and then the other one has the other two. So it's really inaccurate to say two that are four.
Behez is related to
Sid. That's what the Mishnah in Negoim said, and we said the Mishnah in Negoim doesn't hold like Rabbi Akiva. Okay. That's how we're learning.
Why would the Mishnah go according to the Goyim?
Why would our Mishnah go like Negoim? Our Mishnah goes like the first Mishnah in Negoim, and that makes some sense, right? It's not the lone opinion of Rabbi Akiva, right? But no, and we're okay as long as there's an opinion that we can hold like. We just wanted to know. It's good to know which opinion is it that we're holding like. Okay.
So there's no case where there's three shades
where you can combine all three together. You know what? I don't know, but from what Rabbi Akiva is saying, according to this Gemara, these two are really subsidiaries of Seis. Theoretically, all three of these should be able to combine together. That sounds right to me. According to Rabbi Akiva, that would all combine together. Now, Ella, the problem is Sid Heichal Kasha. Sid of the Heichal is going to be where the question mark lies. Because according to Rabbi Akiva, if you're going to interpret, right, the issue of that Seis and Krum Beitza, according to both of Rabbi Akiva's opinion and the Mishnah Negoim, these two are going to be related, so that's not going to be a problem. But the Sid is going to be a machlokas. According to Rabbi Akiva, Sid is going to combine with Seis, and according to the Mishnah Negoim, Sid should combine with Baharis. So Ella machvarta masnisin delok Rabbi Akiva. It's clear that the Mishnah Negoim does not agree with Rabbi Akiva. Okay, fine. Vehecha sham inon l'Rabbi Akiva zu l'mala mizu. Now the question is, okay, we've seen the Mishnah in Maseches Negoim. It doesn't quote Rabbi Akiva as an arguing opinion. It just says one opinion, and then we're left to understand. We must understand from someplace what Rabbi Akiva holds. Where is the source for Rabbi Akiva that he is holding that there's an order of colors, and each color combines with the one above it? So, maybe the answer is, take a look at this brisa. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, Shaul Yehoshua b'nosho Rabbi Akiva me Rabbi Akiva. So Yehoshua, who is Rabbi Akiva's son, it's very interesting. We don't really, we've learned a lot about Rabbi Akiva's wife, Rachel, right? This is Rabbi Akiva's son. Son was named Yehoshua. And it's interesting because Rashi says that this Yehoshua is the Yehoshua ben Korcha that we've seen in other places. Tosfos says absolutely not Yehoshua ben Korcha. Why? Because Yehoshua ben Korcha, his father is Korcha, right? And Rashi says that was Rabbi Akiva's nickname. Korcha, the bold one. Tosfos says, that's crazy. How would you give a big, huge gadol ador like Rabbi Akiva the nickname bold one? That doesn't make sense.
Bold one means something else.
That's what Korcha means, right? To be bold.
We saw something that means something else.
We did have something like that, right? Korcha, what did we say? I cannot remember, but I remember we did say something like that when we were talking about the prohibitions of pulling hair out, right? Korcha means something. Yeah. Okay. But in any event, so Rabbi Yeshua was learning with his son, Rabbi Akiva was learning with his son, and Rabbi Yeshua asks him, Mipnei ma amru maros negoim shnaim sheina arba. He says, Rabbi Akiva, according to you, right? Why does it say two that are four? How do you understand such a concept? So Amar Lo, so he says, V'imlav, ma yomri, he says, well, what should it say? Right? There's only two. There's two avos in the pasuk. It says there are two that's the baharis and the seis. Those are the two, and then that comes down to four. So how should you write it? So he says yomru. What it should say is mikrum beitza ulamala tame. What you should do is, well, since we know that there are brighter and brighter and brighter shades of white, say whatever is from the egg membrane level of whiteness and up is tamei. It doesn't matter to us which one is related to which one, because according to Rabbi Yeshua, who's asking this question, Rabbi Akiva doesn't care which one comes from which one. He just says whichever one is brighter to the next one, you can connect them. So Amar Lo, so he said, so Rabbi Akiva back to him, Lomar shemitzarfim ze im ze. So he says, what this is telling you is that this order, right, tells you that this is the order that this specific order that they're in has to be the order that they combine in. They can't all, because otherwise, if we just said all of the above, I would think you could take this and combine them together. Mm-hmm. So it's not. It's two that are four. They're only certain ones combined. So Amar Lo, so we said back to him, V'yomru mikrum beitza ulamala, tamei umitzarfim zemzeh. So why doesn't it write? Why is still two that are four is still not the right way to write it? Why not write from the bottom one up, right, from the egg membrane whiteness and up and brighter? Those are going to combine together, and then they two of them combine, meaning start here, and then just each one is going to combine with the one above it. Amar Lo, so he said to him, Lo Mar Loch, to say to you, Kol Kohen she'eno baki bahen ubishmoson eno roa es hanegoyim. He says, because this Rabbi Akiva says is to tell me that a Kohen has to be expert in which ones are the main ones, which ones are the minor ones, what's their names. If a Kohen is not an expert, he can't be brought to observe the Negoyim, right? He has to be expert in it. Ve'ilu misid heichal ulamala lo ka'amar. So now, the issue is, right, so therefore, if it said, okay, so now, the point is that he doesn't ask the question, he doesn't ask the question, why don't we look at Krum Beitza and up and from Sid and up? Now, if what Rabbi Akiva was what we were suggesting is that Krum Beitza combines with Se'es and Sid combines with Baheres, so then he should have stated that the Mishnah should have written it in two stages. It should have said, take a look at Krum Beitza, it's going to combine with what is above it, and Sid is going to combine with what is above it. That's how, if it was going to tell me that each one only combines with each one. So therefore, Midalo Amarle, so since Rabbi Yeshua did not say that to Rabbi Akiva, Shma Mino, you can see clearly from there, Deshmiale Rabbi Akiva, what Rabbi Akiva was holding, Damar Kulahu Libahadi Se'es Mitzarfin, that there is no such thing as Krum Beitza only combining with Se'es and Sid only combining with Baheres. All of the above combine with Se'es, right? These Krum, Sid, Se'es, they all combine with Se'es. So now, 1 second. The Dilma, maybe what it means to say is Se'es v'toldasa, Baheres v'toldasa. So, maybe he did say that. So he says maybe what Rabbi Yeshua understood that was that what he was suggesting is Se'es and his tolados and Baheres and his tolados. So, but the Tana of the Brisa didn't explain the entire question of Rabbi Yeshua. So sometimes you have a Brisa, the text of the Brisa doesn't have to be that exact. Mm-hmm. So therefore, to say Rabbi Akiva doesn't hold that that Krum combines with Se'es and Sid combines with Baheres can't be established 100% from the fact that Rabbi Yeshua didn't specify that in his question. So that's not going to be our proof. So we're going to try to bring a proof from someplace else that Rabbi Akiva holds that each escalating level combines. Rabbi Chanina. It's from this position of Rabbi Chanina. Damar Rabbi Chanina, I can't say Chanina. Damar Rabbi Chanina said, Mashal de Rabbi Akiva lemaha davar doma. You know how Rabbi Akiva takes a look at this order? He says the way that you understand Rabbi Akiva is you compare it to arba kosos shel chalav. You imagine 4 cups of milk. Okay, how so? Echad naflu tocho shtei tipin shel dam. If you have 1 cup of milk and 2 drops of blood fall into one. Ve'echad shenaflu letocho arba tipin shel dam. The next one, 4 drops of blood fall in. Ve'echad naflu tocho shmona, and the other one, 8 drops of blood. Ve'echad naflu tocho shtei misrei tipin, and 12 fall in. So therefore, what you can see is that his position of Rabbi Akiva is that there's an escalating level of brightness to each of these levels, and that one combines with the one above it. The Amri law, and some say it's not, what the number shouldn't be 2, 4, 8, 12, but the number should be sheshus, right? 2, 4, 8, 16. That it should be an exponential increase. 2, 4, 8, 16.
Why does it says 2, 4, 8? Where's the 6?
It's a good question. Seems clearly for some reason that going from 2 to 4 and from 4 to 12 and from 4 to 8 and then 8 to 12 seems reasonable and logical to them for some reason. Seems like the 2 to 4, the brightness between Baharis and Sa'is wasn't as significant a distinction versus these where the difference was, there's only 2 drops blood difference between these, and then there's a 4-drop blood difference and an additional 4-drop blood difference from the next. The other opinion says no, it goes from here to here is double, from here to here is double, and then we're going to double it again.
You must know also what makes it more white. Like
What
shades are more whiter than the other because there must be some inclusions in the.
It's a good question, right? No, yeah, I don't.
That's the way the expertise.
You'd have to be able to look at it.
Just comparing it with diamonds, it's the same idea.
That's right. Yeah.
Different shades of white.
Oh, you're going to be an expert on what's coming up. I'm going to add now. I'm glad you're here now. Now, turn the page. We're going to find out answers to some things that you're going to be able to explain. Okay, good. Okay, so now, Shakul and Maris Loveni. All of these are different types of whitenesses. Ella shazel malamizeh v'zel malamizeh. Just that Rabbi Akiva's point is one is brighter than the next one. So Amar Dishmasli the Rabbi Akiva. So 1 second though, that doesn't prove anything. All you're proving is that when it comes to some type of Negoim, one connects with the brighter one above it. And you wanted to say that it was this issue of Beharis Asid Krumbetza, but there's another type of Nega altogether. And that is Amar Dishmasli the Rabbi Akiva bepasuch. When it comes to the Pasach Nega, the Pasach Nega is a white nega, which has red streaks in it. And maybe that's what we're talking about, that each of the different levels, there's levels of those, but they're all levels of Pasach, so therefore they all combine one with the one above it. But Bechaluk, with the plain blank white ones, Mi Shmaslei, how do you know that Rabbi Akiva holds one combines with the one above it? It's not necessarily true. Maybe it's like a Binyanav kind of a situation where if you know that Rabbi Akiva is going to combine one type of nega with the one brighter than it, so then that's what he holds by all types of negaim. They combine with the one brighter than it. So he says, so who says, where do you see Rabbi Akiva holds that way when it comes to the white with streaks? V'atanya, we learned in a brisa, we're changing the girsa to V'atanan, we learned in a Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva says, Adam Dam, these are the red negoim, that's the ones, the white ones with the red streaks. Shebazeh v'shebazeh kiyayin hamazog. So he says that the two that are going to combine are going to be like wine that is diluted, b'mayim in water. So that means, what's he holding? He's saying, the first level and the second level is like wine which is diluted by water. So therefore, shel baheres. So therefore, what does that tell me? It tells me I'm confused by this. What does it mean? Shebazeh. Al Korcha, Rashi says, Al Korcha, Al Rishon V'Sheni. What's the whole Mishnah say? We quote the whole Mishnah here. The Mishnah says, let's see if he quotes the Mishnah. That's none. The Sheba Mishnah in Negoim, the second Mishnah. Kiva Omer, Mar'e Adam Dam, Shebazeh V'Shebazeh. Okay, so this is the red nega, the pasuch, which is the first level and the second level. The color is like wine which is diluted. That we said. Then he says, shall sid, the plaster is deha hemena, is less bright than it, right? It's even dimmer than that. Now, vim isa, now if what Rabbi Akiva is holding, that the order of the pasuch and the order of the other negoim are the same, so then why would he skip from level 1 to level 3? Right, level 1, because he said 1 and 2. He said by the 2 top levels of pasuch, and then he said level 1, and then he has said the sid, which is level 3. Let's go with this and see how it turns out. I'm not sure I'm understanding this. So, so it should have said that wool would have been the second one, which is underneath it, right? It would have said that the 2 top levels of pasuch are the top level, and then the one that's going to combine with it underneath would be the second level, which is wool. So, Amri, so the Gemara answers that inachinami, that is correct. That is, you have to change the girsa. V'hatanya, because we're going to brisa. Rabbi Nasan says, Lo Shama Rabbi Akiva shall sid deha mimena. You're not supposed to read the text that the next color underneath it is the plaster. Ela shel tzemer deha hemena. You should read it that wool is the one underneath it. So what does that prove to me? Sorry that I'm missing the point of this. Yeah, they're trying to prove, and I'm going to try to figure out what's going on here. Maybe post an update to it on the chat afterwards, because I'm not understanding exactly how this works out, and it's going to take me time to figure it out. But what's going on here is that you have Rabbi Akiva we suggest that Rabbi Akiva holds that the order counts only when it comes to a pasuch, which is was the streaked one, and we said that maybe that's not the case when it comes to the one that is of the different levels of whiteness. To which we said, well, why should there should be any distinction, right? Just like he holds that is the order of that should be the order when it comes to the one with the streaks. So too that should be the order when it comes to the regular plain white ones. Okay, so therefore it should be the same. So period. That's where we end that conversation. So we decided that's how we know Rabbi Akiva holds that there's an order, because just like he holds there's an order in streaks, should be the same way that there's an order when it comes to the white ones. Then we said, okay, now, how do we know that he holds this way, that there's an order hierarchy of order according to brightness when it comes to the pasuch ones? That's where I'm struggling with understanding this Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva says that when it comes to the pasuch, the red ones, so then they are I guess it's the streaks, maybe that's the thing, the red streaks, which are in the 2 higher levels, the 2 levels of, that's what it is. Okay. So you have the streaks, which are in the levels of white. So the streak red like diluted wine, right? And they would be in the difference between the level 1 and level 2 is that the Baharis is bright white, whereas the secondary level is like Sid, is like the lime, which is slightly darker, which is slightly dimmer than that. And then they ask the question, what do you mean Sid is slightly dimmer? That's not correct. It should be wool is slightly dimmer. And so then we change the girsa and we make it into wool is slightly dimmer. And so therefore, that shows us that Rabbi Akiva does indeed hold that each level below it is only able to combine with the level above it when it comes to Pasach. And then we learn from Pasach over to the regular Negoim. Okay, I think that's what's going on here. Okay. Sorry for the delay. But it's a complicated one. Okay, so now, let's talk about how we know these are the bright, this is the order of colors. Okay? Uminalan de Baharis Azahi. How do I know that Baharis is the brightest of all of them? So Amar Rabbi says, Amar Kro, the pasuk tells you that. V'im baheres levanahi. If the baheres is bright white, so he levana, ve'nacheres levana, which means it's white, which means there's nothing else white as it. So that is the whitest. Tana Rabbanan. Our rabbis learn. This is where we get our jeweler in to be able to figure out what's going on here. Baheres amuka. Baheres is deep, right? V'chein omer, as it says, umar'eha amuk min ha'or. By looking at something which is bright, light, something which is lit, looks deeper than something which is dark. Tell me that's true. I'm hoping you tell me that's true. Okay, good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so now, kemar echama hamuka minatzel. That's like when you're looking at the sun, and the shade looks closer up than the sun, right? If you look at something like the contrast between something that's shady and something that's sunny, the sun looks deeper, further away than the thing that's darker. And se'es, now we get to the second one, the se'es, ain't se'es ela gavohas. The word se'es means raised up. So therefore, that's where we see in the pasuk, al kol harim haramim, al kol hagvaos hanasuos, all the mountains which are tall, and all of the valleys which are raised, all the hills that are raised up. So therefore, you see that the word se'es it's called raised up because it's darker, so it looks raised compared to the baheres, which is bright. So the bright is further distant, and then the shadow looks closer up. Sapachas. Then we say the word sapachas. That's the other word that's there. And the sapachas is ain't sapachas ela tefelo. The word sapachas means a subsidiary, a derivative. V'chein hu omer, as it says, v'amar safcheni na. So this is where Eli's children are removed from the kahuna, and the punishment is that they're eventually going to have to come back to the future kohanim and say, please absorb us into your family so that we have a chelek as kohanim. Safcheni means absorb us, or consider us to be secondary and subsidiaries. Ashkechon tefela l'se'es. Okay, so now we can find something which is a secondary, a tefela to the se'es, right? Why? Because the pasuk says, se'es o sapachas, right? The subsidiary to the se'es, and then it says baheres. But it doesn't say a sapachas to the baheres. It just says se'es sapachas, and then a baheres. So tefela the baheres minol. And how do I know there's also a subsidiary to the baheres? Rabbi says, Nemra levana b'se'es, v'nemra levana b'baheres. There's a gzera shava. The word levana is written both by, when it comes to the se'es and the baheres. Ma levana hamura b'se'es yesh la tefela. Just like when it comes to se'es, there is a white which is secondary to it. Af levana hamura b'baheres. So too the white which is by the baheres. So that is yesh la tefela. There's a secondary one to that as well. B'masnisa tana, we learned the following in Brisa, that hitil hakosav l'sapachas bein se'es lebaheres. The reason the word sapachas is written in between the two words, it says se'es usapachas ubaheres, with the word sapachas in the middle, is lomar lach kishem shetefila l'se'es kach tefila lebaheres. That the word sapachas applies to both the word before it and the word after it. So that baheres gets a subsidiary and se'es gets a subsidiary. Okay? Then the next one is se'es is kitsemer lavan. Se'es is like white wool. Might semer lavan. What is white wool? So Amar Bibi Amar Rabbi Yossi. So Bibi said in Rabbi Yossi that semer noki ben yomo. It is a sheep that is born. Its wool is 1 day old. She mechabnin bo lemilos. And what they would do is, in order to keep the wool clean, right? The mother cleans off the sheep after it's born. In order to keep it clean, you then take a leather kind of coat, like a strap or something over it, and cover the wool so that it doesn't get all muddy and dirty. So that's what they would do. And that's the kind of white we're talking about. Amar Rabbi Chanina says, Mashal de Rabbanan limad davar doma. The Rabbanan, this opinion that Baheres goes with Sid and Se'es goes to Krum Beitza, what's it similar to? Doma l'trei malchei u'l'trei ifrichi. That it's like two kings and two governors, right? Malchus shelzeh l'mala mi malchus shelzeh. One king is above the other king. Ve'ifrichu shelzeh l'mala mi ifrichu shelzeh, and that makes the one governor in charge of the other over the other governor. 1 second. Hai zel l'mala mi zeh, zel l'mala mi zehu. That's not how that works. That's not a good parable, because what you just said is king, governor, governor, right? And what should be happening is there should be two groups: king, governor, king, governor. Ela malchus shelzeh l'mala me'afruche dinafshe, u'malchus shelzeh l'mala me'afruche dinafshe. What it means to say is there's a king and he has his governor, and then there's a king, and he has his governor. That's what 2 that are 4 means. This one has this, and this one has this. Rav Ada bar Ava Amar, Rav Ada bar Ava explains, Kegon Malka ve'al Katva, Rufila ve'reish Galusa. So it's like this order of seniority in terms of government officials. The king, and then the Al-Kafta, and then the Rufila, and then eventually the Reish Galusa, the head exarch. Hi Zem Lamala Mizehu. So 1 second, that's not a good parable. You just listed 4 ranks, one over the other. You have to somehow connect 1 and 3 together with 2 and 4, that in order for this to be a good match. So rather, could go Malka Rufila. To imagine if you've got the king and the Rufila, right? That's got person number 1 and 3. They're walking separately. The king and the Rufila are walking together. The Al-Kafta v'Reish Galusa, and the Al-Kafta and the Reish Galusa are over here. 1 and 3 are together, and 2 and 4 together. Rava Amar, Rava says, I'll tell you what it's like. It's Kigon Shibar Malka v'Kesar. It's like Shibar Malka and the Caesar. Shibar Malka was the king of Persia, and Caesar is the king of Rome. Okay? So that's what it's like. 2 separate divisions. So Amar Lei, Rav Papa Rava. So Rav Papa asks Rava, Haimina hu adif? Who's more powerful of those 2? Which one is like in the parable? Like which one is higher? So Amar Lei, so he says Bechurshia ka'achilei. He says, what are you like living under a rock? Was it that Bechurshei? That is the literal translation is.
Do you live in a forest?
Do you live in a forest? Right. You're living in a forest. You don't know who's in charge. So. Pok chazi tiva deman sagi bialma. He says, go take a look around, see who's in charge of the world here. Dichsiv, pasuk says, and then he brings a pasuk to show you, right? You couldn't even go around. You could just read the pasuk. Pasuk says, Vatocha kol ara vetadoshna vetadekana. He consumed the whole land, and he trampled it, and he shattered it. And that is talking about the king of the 4th exile, which is Rome. So that, you see, the Romans are way more powerful than the Persians by that time. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Zu Romi. This is talking about Rome. So, Chayav de Shetiva Yotza B'chol Olam Kulo. So he says this is Romi Chayavis, the evil Romans, Shetiva, that I guess their sound or their governance, their rule has gone all over the entire world. Ravina says, "Kigon glima de amar v'shachke sadina de chisna v'shachke." He says you have to imagine it's like having a brand new wool tallis and an old wool tallis and a brand new linen tallis and an old linen tallis. That's what it's like. The brightnesses of it. Okay. Now let's get back to our topic of tuma. Right, because we missed our tuma for a while while we were doing the good. Let's get back to the easier topic, the tuma. Right? Okay. As sheyesh ba yediyah batchila, we said that you have to be able to be aware of it at the beginning, forget, and then remember at the end. Tana Rabbanan, so he says, how do you know that the pasuk, right, is not talking about that you are. The pasuk is, 1 second, let's read the pasuk. We have it here. The pasuk says, okay. How do I know that the prohibition that we're talking about here is a prohibition when you are tameh and you eat kodshim, or you enter the Beis HaMikdash, but it's not talking about the Isser is touching Tuma itself without eating it. Maybe becoming Tameh is Asr. Maybe that's what's going to say. The pasuk says, O b'nefesh shetiga b'chol davar Tameh, O b'nivlas chaya, right? If you touch anything that's Tameh, so then maybe that's when you have to bring this korban, when you touch something that's Tameh. So, V'dinhu, it's logical. Hol v'his here v'anash al hatuma v'chayev korban al hatuma ma shekes shehis here v'anash al hatuma lo his here v'anash ella al tumas mikdash uktashav afke shechayev korban al hatuma lo chayev ella al tumas mikdash uktashav. You have to take a look and see the parallel, right? There's becoming tameh, and then there's becoming tameh and touching something that is hektish or eating something that's hektish. When it comes to the losase, when it comes to the punishment, right? When it comes to the punishment, it's clearly talking about a circumstance where you touched something that's tamei, and then you ate ekdish or came in contact with the base of mikdash. So therefore, the losa say. So. So 1 second. Here's your va'anash al tuma. Chayav korban al tuma. Ma'akashir va'anash al tuma leiser al tumas mikdash shidoshav chayav korban. Oh, so that's the point, right? So the Torah tells us that you get kares for if you do this on purpose. You do this avera on purpose, you get kares. You eat something, you become tamei, and then you eat a korban while you're tamei, you get kares. Or if you go into the base of mikdash, you get kares. So that is talking about a circumstance where you have to you can't get kares just for touching tuma, right? Just if you touch tuma, there's no kares if I do it on purpose. That the Torah is very clear on. So too, when it comes to the korban olav yored, where it isn't as clear, the korban is only going to be in the same sort of a case. You become tamei, and likewise you eat something that's kodesh, or you go into a place that is kodesh. Just becoming tamei by itself isn't going to be sufficient to bring you the korban olav yored, right? Those are two parallel things. The punishment is the same thing as the korban. Okay, so now, ve'ema, okay, so ema, truma. So, well, how do you know that the korban olav yored, because the pasuk by korban olav yored just says, right, the pasuk just says that you become tamei and you forgot about it and you were guilty. It doesn't make it clear what you're guilty of. So now we're presuming that you're guilty of something like eating kodesh or coming in contact with a place that's kodesh. Maybe it means that you became tamei and you ate truma, which also you're not allowed to do. Shehiz here va'anash. So the Torah says you're not allowed to do that on purpose. If you're tamei and you eat truma, the punishment is misa b'dei shemayim. So lo ashkechan avon misa dechayav alei korban. The answer is that wouldn't make sense. We never find any prohibition where if you do it on purpose, you get misa, and if you do it through negligence, you are going to get, you're only going to get a korban, right? We find if you're chayav kares and you do it on purpose, then if you do it negligently, then you have to bring a korban, but not if you get misa. So if you're going to take a look and choose which of these two averos is going to be the one that you're going to be chayav for the korban olav yored, and because the pasuk's not clear, it makes more sense to pick the tuma one where you're chayav kares for that, rather than the truma one, the mikdash one, because that's where you are chayav kares for that, versus the circumstance where you are eating truma, where you're chayav misa for that one. So the answer is, 1 second, ema hanimili korban kavua. Maybe that rule that if you do it on purpose, you get kares, and if you do it through negligence, you bring a korban, that is a regular standard set korban, right? Aval, however, olav yored, when it comes to a korban olav yored, the one that changes values, neise midi dahava ashmias kol va'bitui sfasayim. So I'm sorry, olav yored neisi. So he says the answer is by maybe korban olav yored is a different rule, right? So the korban olav yored is a different rule because it doesn't follow the standard rules of other korbanos either, because the value of it changes. So therefore, maybe that is one that you bring a korban despite the fact that you're chayav misa. So the answer is no, because take a look at the other averos that are involved in the korban olav yored. Midi dahavi ashmias kol va'bitui sfasayim. The other two averos that you bring a korban olav yored for is if shmias kol, that's when somebody has testimony to give for a court case, and he gets invited to testify, and he says, no, I don't want to testify. So by withholding testimony, he's in violation. He has to bring a korban olav yored. Bitui sfasayim are the oaths that we were talking about before, where he took an oath that he was going to do something, not do something. That's the korban olav yored they were talking about. So those are two averos. There's no misa involved in those. Those are neither misa or kares. So amar kra. So the answer is therefore. So therefore, it makes more sense to compare it to tuma, where you're not chayav misa. Okay, so then amar kra. So the pasuk says, But you're not chayiv. But the point is, though, that you're not chayiv misa or tuma, so it's not similar to either of those two. So the answer is Amar Kra ba. The pasuk says when it comes to korban olav yored that o ki yiga betumas adam lekol tumas asher yitma ba. Right, if you touch any tuma, then or you become impure to it. So what's to it? To it is an exclusive phrase. It means only to one type of thing. If you become tamei to that one type of thing, then you're going to be bringing this korban olav yored. Ba lemuute truma. Ba comes to tell me not truma. So therefore, ba, because you're right, it could be either truma or it could be coming in contact with something that's kodesh. Therefore, ba comes to exclude truma. So the problem is, ema ba lemuute mikdash. You don't know what ba is coming to exclude. Ba is coming to exclude something, but it's not clear which one of these two is coming to exclude. Say it's coming to exclude the other one. Delo sagile bekorban olav yored. And why would that make logical sense, right? If when it comes to tumas mikdash, if tumas mikdash is going to be excluded, then why would you think to bring a korban? Why would you think that you could? Second, so he says the answer is. If you go into the Beis Hamikdash while you're tamei, then you're chayav kares. Kares is so severe that a korban olav yored would not be sufficient. So the tuma is going to be the one that comes to be excluded. Okay, so therefore, ad demaisi korban kavua. So therefore, you wouldn't be able to bring a korban. So what we'll be telling you is, you wouldn't be bringing a korban olav yored under that circumstance. You'd bring a regular korban under those circumstances. So then, kori rava alei de Rabbi. So therefore, this again. Ba, now what we've decided is ba could go either way, either interpretation. Ba could exclude truma, ba could exclude tuma, so we have no source. We're still struggling to be able to figure out the source. How do we know that the korban olav yored is when you're tamei and you come in contact with hektish or kodshim? So the answer, so now, kari rava alei de Rabbi. So Rava said about Rabbi, Dole Maimi Boros Amukim. He is one who draws water from deep places because he answered the question and he figured it out. Titania's we're going to brisa. Rabbi says Akra ani chaya. So behema lama nemra. The pasuk when it talks about kosher and non-kosher animals uses the word chaya. Right. These are the chayos these are the chaya that you can eat, and then it says any behema which has split hooves. So why does it switch from chaya to behema? The answer is to tell me that chayas and behemoths are the same. They have the same rules, right? Split hooves chew their cud. That's how you know whether you have a kosher chaya, which are the non-domesticated animals, the deer, the giraffes, and all the gazelles, and gazelles. Yeah, I think gazelles. And then you have the ones that are domesticated, cows and sheep. So the rules are the same. So namar kan behema tameya, but namar lahalan behema tameya. So now, pasuk says by which two cases? It says by the korban olav yored, the word behema tameya, and then it says also by somebody who is tamei, who eats kodshim on purpose. It also uses the word behema tameya. So malahalan tumas. So because it doesn't have to say behem, right? So why does it use that phrase behema? Malahalan tumas kodesh, just like the phrase behema tameya, which is in Vayikra Zayin Chaf Aleph. So that is talking about for sure, because that's clear in the pasuk there that it's talking about somebody who is tamei, who comes in contact with something which is hektish, and therefore he's chayav because he did it on purpose. Afkan tumas kodesh. So here too, when he's doing it not on purpose, he's going to bring korban olav yored under that circumstance as well. So now ashkechan tumas kodesh. So now we found a source, Gzera Shava. We found a source that if he comes in contact with something that is kadosh, which is the korban, so then he's going to be chay of the korban olav yored. Tumas mikdash minolan, but we still don't have a source how it's going to include if somebody was tamei and came into the Beis Hamikdash, he's chay of korban olav yored. So Amar Kra, the pasuk says, v'chol kodesh lo tiga, ve'el hamikdash lo tavo. Anything that's kodesh you should not touch, and you should not come into the Beis Hamikdash. Iskas mikdash lekodesh. This pasuk tells us that the rules of the korbanos and the rules of the Beis Hamikdash are identical. So therefore, just like you get korban olav yored if you're tamei and you come into and you eat kodesh, so too you bring korban olav yored if you're tamei and you come into the mikdash. Ihachi, if that is true, truma nami. So then truma is also compared to something that's kodesh, and then truma should be included. So Damar Mar says Mar said bechol kodesh lo tiga. So when the pasuk says anything that's kodesh you shall not touch, that's lerabos esat truma. That comes to include truma. So kodesh, truma is also called kodesh. So the answer is hamiyat rachman ba. So he says, well, the Torah tells us ba. Remember ba? Ba comes to tell us something's got to get excluded. So ema ba lemute mikdash. Well, now that you've told me, what we have is we've got a Gzera Shava that tells me that it includes that this olav yored includes eating a korban. Now you told me that korban equals the same thing as mikdash, and so we've included that as well. Now I've shown you that the korban and truma are also equated. And then you told me, well, you've got to exclude truma because of the word ba. So why did you choose to exclude the truma from the word ba? You could have chosen to exclude mikdash from the word ba also. So the answer is mistavra mikdash lo mematinon. It makes more sense to not exclude the coming into the Beis HaMikdash shekain bekares kamosa, because the punishment for doing that on purpose is kares, just like eating the korban would be kares. Yeah, but adirabba, the other way makes more sense. Truma lo matinan, we shouldn't exclude truma. Why? Shekain achila kamosa, because eating a korban and eating truma are both eating averos. So those two should be the same. Mikdash should be excluded. Ella amar Rava. So Rava says instead, shalosh krisos bishlamim lama. Why is it that there are 3 psukim in the Torah that the word kares is written? Achas, the first one is leklal, for the general rule that anybody who eats anything which is kodesh while they are tamei gets kares. V'achas leprat, the other one to tell me that any person who eats a shlamim while he's tamei gets kares. V'achas l'tuma haksuva b'Torah, and the other one to tell me that you get kares for eating anything that is tamei, that is written, that it comes to tell me that it includes anything that is tamei in the Torah. What is that talking about? Any tuma in the Torah?
Via 19 here.
Sorry?
One of the remaining 2 mentions of kares, either Leviticus and Devarim 7:20 or 7:21, they need to state the kares penalty specifically.
Oh, that's what it is. Latuma haksuva b'Torah stam. In order to tell me that whenever the word tuma is written is written here by the korban olav yored, and it was unclear to us whether it was talking about tuma of mikdash and kodesh or not. So therefore, it doesn't explain. The Eini Yodea Mahi, I didn't know which type of tuma it was talking about, because we thought maybe it's tuma coming in contact with truma, maybe it's truma coming in contact with the kodesh we already learned. But how about the mikdash? Haviomer tumas kodesh. This must tell me that it's somebody who's tamei coming in contact with something that's kodesh with the korban. Now the problem is we already know that from the Gzera Shava. So therefore, v'im eno inyan l'tumas kodesh. If it doesn't come to include Tumas Kodesh, because that we already have a pasuk for, did nafgalei midarebi, because we already had the Gzera Shava that Rebbe learned from before, to new Inyan Tumas Mikdash. It comes to tell me that this is the rule by somebody who is Tameh coming into the Mikdash. So therefore, that's why Kares is listed there. So now, 1 second though. That's not why the third one is there. So we said from the third word kares, that's what's coming to tell me that this pasuk is talking about tumas mikdash. We need that third kares, like what Rabbi Avo said. Damar Rabbi Avo says shows krisos bishlamim lama. Why are there 3 times the word kares written by korban shlamim? Achas leklal, 1 for the general rule that anytime you are tamei, then you are going to, and you eat a korban, you got kares. V'achas leprat, 1 is specifically for the shlamim. Anytime you're tamei, you eat a shlamim, you get kares. V'achas ledvarim she'ina necholin, and 1 to tell me that if you're tamei and you eat something that's kodesh that's not even edible, you also get kares. If you eat the wood from the Beis HaMikdash, you are chayav kares. Rabbi Shimon damar dvarim she'ina necholin ein chayav aleim kares mishum tuma la'asuyei chatos hapnimios. And according to Rabbi Shimon, who holds that you are not liable for kares if you eat something non-edible, it comes to include the korban chatas where the blood is sprinkled inside. That's this week's parsha by Yom Kippur, where they did a bull offering and a goat offering, they sprinkled those offerings inside the Beis HaMikdash. So those are generally not eaten, but they are edible. So if you eat those, then you are chayav kares. Because I would have thought to have said, Hol v'amar Rabbi Shimon, when Rabbi Shimon said, Kol she'enu karev ala mizbeach achitzon, kishlamim, anything which is not burned on the mizbeach, like a regular korban shlamim, ein chayav and aleim mishum pigul, the rules of pigul, which is that when somebody is sacrificing an animal and they have in mind for the sacrifice to take place outside of its proper time, so then that invalidates the sacrifice. There's no such thing as pigul on a sacrifice that is not like the shlamim. The shlamim, because the teachings of pigul are taught around the psukim of shlamim. So therefore, just like the shlamim is burnt on the mizbeach, also all animals that are burnt on the mizbeach are eligible for pigul. These animals, these korban chatas animals, where the blood is sprinkled on the inside, they are not burned on the mizbeach. Therefore, pigul does not apply to them. So therefore, mishum tumanami lo. So I might have thought, since these are already ineligible for being pigul, maybe they're also ineligible for being chayav kares if you eat them while you're tamei. Kamash malan. So therefore, the third kares comes to tell me demechayev that you are liable kares if you eat them. Ella. So we still have no source for this tumas mikdash to be able to prove it. Amri nardai mishmei de Rava. So rather the nardai they taught in the name of Rava. Shalosh tumas bishlamim lama. Why is it that the tuma, there are 3 times that the tuma is listed by shlamim? Achas liklal, one is for the general rule. The achas leprat, one is for the specific circumstance of the shlamim. The achas letuma haksuva b'torah stam. So the other one is this, in order to teach me that the tuma that we are talking about in the Torah is to tell me, in others, we don't know what the word tuma talks about in that circumstance. So in the circumstance of the korban olav yored. So since the word tuma is written a 3rd time extra by the shlamim, it tells me that tuma means eating korbanos. Ve'eni yodea mahi, I still don't know what it's talking about. Havi omer tumas kodesh. It must mean that it's talking about the tuma of eating kodesh.
Holiness.
Of something that's a korban. Ve'im eno inyan letumas kodesh denafkalei mid Rabbi, but we already have Rebbe's Gzera Shava. So with Rebbe's Gzera Shava, we already know that eating something which is a korban while you're tamei is going to get you kares, or is considered what's tamei. So therefore, to new inyan letumas migdash tells us that the word tuma, when listed without clarity, means the tuma of coming into the Beis HaMikdash. Now, nami mibayli, even that word tuma is already needed to teach me. Aidi debayli michtav kares likat Rabbi Yavo. Once the pasuk is talking about the avera of kares, and we already explained according to Rabbi Yavo that we needed to write those 3 averos of kares for Rabbi Yavo's purposes, because of nami tumos. So you have to explain that the avera is the tuma. Delo sagi lahu, delo sagi la belav hachi, because you wouldn't understand what you're getting kares for if you didn't write the word tamei in those psukim. So therefore, Ella Amarav, Rava. So Rava says instead, here's the source. Asya tumaso, tumaso. We have another Gzera Shava. Gzera Shava, the word tumaso, uksuvaso, and tumaso. Ksiv hacha, it says over here by the korban olav yored. It says lechol tumaso, anything that he is in his tamei. Uksiv hasam, and then it says over there about somebody who's tamei who goes into the mikdash. It says, Tamei yiyeh o tumas abo. He will be tamei. His tuma is still on him. Malahol and tumas migdash, just like the pasuk that is in Bamidbar Yud Tes pasuk Yud Gimel is talking about somebody who's tamei going into the Beis HaMikdash. Afkan tumas migdash. So too, the korban olav yored is tumas migdash. So now, what the summary of that is that Rebbe taught us one Gzera Shava to tell me that it refers to that you get a korban olav yored when you're tamei and you eat the korban. And then this is from Rava. So Rava tells me a Gzera Shava for tumaso to tell me that going into the mikdash, going into the Beis HaMikdash, you also get tuma as well. So now the ela ba lamali. Well, then we have got to go back and remember we had the word ba. Ba comes to exclude something. Well, there's nothing to exclude now because including it was a Gzera Shava. So that means anything that's not included in Gzera Shava is not included. You don't need the word ba anymore. So the answer is lerabos nevelas of toher. It's coming to include, to tell me that I'm also liable for becoming tamei from eating the nevela, the unslaughtered, properly slaughtered bird, right? Of a tohar bird. So that is also going to tell me that you are going to bring a korban ol v'yored in that circumstance as well. And that's a chiddush. The reason why that's unique is because all the other types of tumah, it says in the pasuk, asher yiga, that you have to touch. A bird that's kosher, that was not slaughtered properly, doesn't contract tumah by touching it, only when you eat it. So if you get yourself, I don't know what's the non-kosher branded chicken around here. We used to say Purdue chicken, so it's like the big chicken brand in the United States. Right, so you have one kind of chicken, KFC, right? You go have yourself a KFC chicken, your tummy, as soon as you swallow the chicken, not when you touch the bucket, right? So therefore, that doesn't count. So I would think that doesn't count. The answer is no, ba comes to include it. Yeah, but 1 second. The problem with that is ha amart ba miuto. You just told me the word ba is a miut, means to exclude something. How can you come to include it? So the answer is mishum de miuta hi iyaser. The answer is you're right. It is exclusive, but because it's exclusive, that's why it's inclusive. That sounds paradoxical. What does that mean? Ksiv, because the pasuk says, O ki yiga. The pasuk says, anything you shall touch. That's when this avera applies. So that's davar debar negia in, dela bar negia lo. So that's an exclusive phrase. That is an exclusive phrase that tell me that the only types of tumah that I can contract and then be chayav a korban ol v'yored is if I contract a tumah through touching. Or it doesn't have to be contracted through tumah, but I have to contract it from something in which if I touched it, I would become tamei, right? So the uksiv ba, and then it says ba, miyuta hava. So miyuta, that is another exclusive phrase. So hava miyut achar miyut. This is the concept of an exclusive phrase after another exclusive phrase. V'ein miyut achar miyut el rabos. When you have two exclusive phrases, it really comes to include. Because how it works is like this. The first exclusive phrase says, only the types of tumah which you can touch, that's the type that you're going to be liable for a korban ol v'yored. And then it says, but only in this specific case. So, and that's not going to include in a specific case. Which specific case? Not the bird. So therefore, the tumah of the bird comes to be included back in. Sorry about that, Kamar.
Wow.
All right,
Yeah.
we will stop here for
yeah.
Meyer. Hopefully we'll get our minion.
Yeah.
But tricky.